Okay, this week's Parsha is Parshas Pinchas, where amazingly, the end of last week's Parsha, we see the first half of the story. We see that the Bilam, in the end, couldn't get to the Jewish people, and therefore what he decided to do was to get to their Kedusha, was to try to impair their holiness and their connection to God. And the way to impair their connection to God is get them involved in immorality. Immorality is not such a hard thing to entice people to get involved in, and he was successful. He was successful getting them involved in sexuality and successful in getting them involved in idolatry. And then it happened that the prince of the tribe of Shimon walks through the camp with his girlfriend, who is from the Mijanim, and she's a princess. It doesn't say who they were. It doesn't give us their names, but Pinchas sees this, and he realizes that this is a terrible aberration of justice, and this is against all levels of morality in the Jewish people. And he goes and he kills the two of them. Very dramatic little story. Vayidkor shneim ish Yisro v'isha al kubasa, and then v'tiyatza magefa mi'al b'nei Yisrael. And then the Torah tells us that the plague stopped. V'yu amesim b'magefa arba v'yasim elef, and there was those that died in the magefa were 24,000. And then in this week's parsha, Vayedaber Hashem Moshe Lamer, God speaks to Moses and he says to him, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen, Heishiv es chamasi, he has returned my anger. Me'al b'nei Yisrael, he's made my anger recess from the Jewish people. Bekano es kinasi, because he took vengeance for me. Besocham amongst them, v'lo chilisi es b'nei Yisrael bekinasi. And I'm not going to destroy the Jewish people because of my jealousy. L'chein emor, therefore I say, hineni nosein lo es brisi shalom, I give him the covenant of peace. So the way that Pinchas is presented in the Parsha, whereas Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen, Pinchas the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron HaKohen, it's a lot of yichus. It's a lot of points. There are even some points that are missing from there, but it's like telling over his whole family history. So Rashi realizes the problem, and Rashi says the fishoyu ashvatim mevazim oso, because people used to make fun of him. Pinchas was not necessarily the most loved and sought after person. Pinchas they looked at as being a weirdo, because here Isam ben Puti zeh shepitim avi imo agolim lavodas kochavim. Have you seen this Ben Puti, the son of a fattener? He was the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron HaKohen. His grandfather on the one side was Aaron HaKohen. His grandfather on the other side was Yisro. And he said, have you seen this Ben Puti, this one who fattens cows? He's the son of a fattener of cows. And what did his father do? The Aviyimo, the father of his mother, he was pitem agolim lavodas kochavim. He would fatten cows and beef them up to get them ready for Avodah Zarah, because he was an Oved Avodah Zarah most of his life until he came to Har Sinai and decided to accept God and his Torah. V'hareg nasi shevet miYisrael, and he killed the nasi, a shevet from the shevet miYisrael, and he killed one of us, one of our best. There's this law. Be bad enough that this guy got killed, but he's getting killed by a lowlife. What's going on here? The fikach ba'akosov. That's why the Torah comes v'yichasu achar Aaron. That's why they stuck him on Aaron. Now they made it clear that he was really the grandson of Aaron. It's not. He's got two grandfathers. Why didn't the Torah put that it was also the grandson of Yisro? The Torah should have said it, and this way it would have taken away all kinds of wonder and anger from the people. But instead, the Torah didn't say it, and it only says one grandfather, Ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen. And of course, it's going to generate all kinds of weirdnesses. If there's only being miyuchas after one of them, why only focus on one Zayda, not the second Zayda? Second problem, and it's a huge problem. How were the Jews allowed to make fun of Pinchas based on what his grandfather did. First of all, his grandfather was a full-on kosher convert to the Jewish people. Once you convert into the Jewish people, you are no longer a convert, you are a Jew. There is in America a very popular thing to use a term called Jews by choice. We are all Jews by choice. We can opt out at any moment. Now, there's grave consequences if we do, but we can opt out at any moment. There is no such thing as a Jew by choice. Once you are a Jew, you are a Jew. There is almost nothing that a convert is barred from, or a convert has to worry if they can do. There are certain positions that they can't hold, certain things, phrases that they might not be able to say, but that's only questionable. And really, la halacha, there is nothing different between a converted Jew, those who are converted in a kosher way, between a converted Jew and a regular Jew. Not only that, you're not allowed to ever remind a converted Jew that he is converted. You can talk to him about it. You can bring it up if it's necessary for his further growth. You can, if there's somebody who wants to convert to Judaism, to send them to this person. If the person is comfortable with that, there's nothing wrong with that. But you can't bring that person back to their place and say to them, I think that I would be a little more reticent, a little quieter in some of the things that I say, because after all, look at you and look at your history. You were dancing around the Christmas tree. Just remember that. Be a little modest. It's aser muchlot to say such a thing to a convert, because we know that a convert is kikatan nolad dami. They are like a brand new born baby. They have no connections. They have no past. They have no parents. They have no siblings. They're disconnected from everything. And therefore, the level of sensitivity we have to them is incredibly high. As a matter of fact, the word love is used 3 times in the Torah. 1 to love God, 1 to love each other, and 1 specifically to love a convert. Now, the convert should be covered in v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, and you have to love your neighbor as yourself. But he's not. We have to pull him out specifically so that we understand that the convert needs special care. We're never allowed to bring him back to his place. We can't remind him of what he was in the past, of that he was a sinner in the past. How were they allowed to say these words? Did you see Ben Putizeh, Shapitim Avimo? They were ranking him out because of something not only that he didn't do, but something that they were accusing his grandfather of doing. But his grandfather had already walked away from that. He had done tshuva. He had repented and he had converted to the Jewish people. Third problem, what exactly are they complaining about? Because why are they focusing on the Zaidie's sin? The Zaidie, it could be problematic. The fact that he once was a manufacturer of idols and of idolatry, of animals for idolatry. He had an idolatry company, shkoyach, not a great thing. But at the end of the day, focus on what Pinchas did. Pinchas stopped the Magefa. He stopped a disease running through the Jewish people. He stopped a sickness, a plague. He took care of these people that were committing the worst chil Hashem, of this leader of the Jewish people that was committing flagrantly an act of immorality in front of his tribe, in front of every tribe. Pinchas was the only one that got off his can and did something. What are you focusing only on the negative stuff or on what his grandfather was? Focus on the amazing thing that he did. He averted disaster. And finally, it's just interesting that kina, Bekaneus Kinasi, which we talk about, the zealousness and the word jealous, kina, are the same word. Let's see that now. If you ever sit in a room, or you're sitting outside, and somebody lights up a cigarette, and they're smoking away from everyone, but you could smell a little bit the smoke. Somebody starts to hack away and cough, fall down on the floor, roll over. You're going to kill us all. Right? There's a secondhand smoke. Don't you know it's the most dangerous thing in the world? And the person's like coughing and putting on a whole show. You know one thing about that person. They used to smoke. Because if a person never smoked, you see a person smoke, okay, could you please stop that? Don't do it over here. You know, we don't appreciate that. Shkayach, end the story. But a person that puts on a whole show, that's a person who once smoked. Why? Because they're not really done smoking yet. And they're still struggling with the fact that they smoke, that they don't smoke. They're not completely out of the woods. They haven't changed themselves completely yet. And therefore, the only way that they know how to deal with this is that when they smell that smoke, they're being dragged back into their smoking, into their past. And therefore, the only way they know how to successfully deal with that is by chopping it off, is by being angry about it, and by reacting that way, because that way they remind themselves. This is part of their avodah. It's part of their work to remind themselves smoking is such a terrible thing. You know, we find it sometimes by Bali Tshuva also, that a person who decides they're going to keep Shabbos, but they're not completely done yet with not keeping Shabbos. They might be practically, they don't transgress Shabbos anymore, but emotionally, they haven't put themselves yet completely into Shabbos. When they see people driving on Shabbos, they get so upset. Where they just can't even look at it. They can't, because it's them. They still feel that they're there. They're not out of that yet. When a person changes and goes through changes, that's a difficult thing which he continues to struggle with throughout until he finally gets over it. It's a constant struggle. Only railing against it is going to give him the strength to continue to fight against it. Because if he doesn't rail against it, he's going to be sucked back into it in a second. He's clearly struggling, and that's the reason he's still in the process of ridding himself of it. And that's the reason why he's feeling this way. You know, they call it the Elliot Spitzer syndrome. I think Americans would understand this. Elliot Spitzer was some big shot, I think the Attorney General or something in New York, and went after brothels and prostitution in a very big way. And then he himself was caught. And it became very clear why he had dedicated himself to this in such a strong way, because he shut him down, and he was so virulent about it because really he was trying to help himself. The reason why a person could be zealous is because they're jealous. A person has kinah because he has kinah. He feels this anger. Why are you doing that? You're desecrating God's name. Because he still feels that drive and that draw to desecrate God's name. People were saying, you know why Pinchas got up and killed and did the things that he did? Because he has some of those strains. Because he is the Ben Puti. He is the grandson of grandfather who was a fattener of calves for idolatry. He was brought up in that kind of environment, of an immoral environment. They weren't looking at his grandfather and dragging his grandfather into it. They were trying to explain why he was so zealous. Because it's hard to imagine that he was zealous for the real reason. What is kinah? What is real zealotry? Zealotry is not anger. Zealotry is not coming from a place of I'm trying to make myself feel better and therefore I'm zealous. Zealous is that you feel it, it's burning inside of you, it's pouring out of you. You see somebody desecrating God's name and you feel for God, not for you. It's not that you look at it intellectually, you say that person is doing something that's really awful. You feel that it's awful. It's ke'ilu, as if somebody were to say something about your relative. Somebody would say something about your spouse. Somebody would say something about your best friend. And you would feel not for yourself, but you would feel for them. That's a person who's zealous. A person who throws stones at people driving on Shabbos could be zealous, but could also be just that it's offensive to them to see people driving on Shabbos. And it's not clear where it's coming from. Unfortunately, maybe it is, but it's not always clear where it's coming from. And they looked at Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron a Kohen, and they saw not the son of Aaron, a lover of people and a lover of God, but they saw the other side of the family that were immoral people. And that they thought that, you know what Pinchas was all about? He was a reformed smoker. Pinchas was trying to get himself out of idolatry and immorality. And that's why he had that burning sense of being a kanoi. And God sends a message to them. And he says to them, it's not it. You know who he really is in his core? He's a ben Aaron a Kohen. He is an Oev Shalom, V'rodev Shalom. He loves peace and he pursues peace. That's really who he is. You know, when a person is self-centered, they're not usually community-minded. A self-indulgent person is usually disconnected from others because they're just so focused on themselves. And that's why they wanted him to know that Pinchas is not self-centered, he's not disconnected. He's a community person. He's like his dad, he's like his grandpa. He's a ben Aaron a Kohen. And therefore it was coming from his desire to have shalom. It was coming from a burning desire to make peace in the Jewish people. I've mentioned this before, but it's critical that when you look at the word shalom in your chumash, whether you're using an art scroll chumash or whether you're using any other chumash, what you'll see is that in the word shalom, in verse 12, you'll see it printed in many Hebrew chumashim also. You'll see that there is a split in the vav, and that there is actually, it said there's a little asterisk often, and it says on the side in the margin, it says vav ketia. It's a cut off vav. That the vav is written different than every other vav in the Torah. It's written almost as two letters, because there are two ways to make shalom. You can make shalom through the vav achibur, the vav that attaches, or you can make things shalom and whole by detaching and removing that which is detracting from the unity. We tend to think that the only way to make shalom is to be a pacifist, is to be a huggy kissy, everything's great, I'm okay, you're okay, I'm not going to make waves, we're going to accept everybody. And sometimes that doesn't make shalom. Sometimes that makes huge divisions. It would be great if we could do it that way. But when we start to bend our own principles, when Pinchas would have had to accept something which was unacceptable to him, so then he had to use the other vav for shalom. He had to use the vav that separates. Because sometimes you've got to cut out that disease in order to be able to make the organism shalom, to make it whole. And God wanted them to know that he was a peacemaker. He wasn't ripping apart Klal Yisrael. He wasn't an immoral person. He loved others, and that's why God gave him the bris shalom, the covenant, the covenant of peace. Because even with the vav that separates, you're still making peace. But why was last week's Parsha? Why do we have half the story in last week's Parsha and then half the story in this week's Parsha? Because last week was the action. It was the story, what happened. But it's a confusing thing to watch. To do that, to be a vigilante, you have to be so pure, as we spoke. You have to be so clear. You have to be so filled with a desire for shalom. You have to actually love the person you're killing. You have to love them, and you have to love the people that they come from. And therefore, God tells over the story, and then separation, and then God lets us know, he says amen to the Maisa of Pinchas, to let us know that what Pinchas did was something that was precious and something that was special. Because without that ratification, we, like the rest of the Jewish people, would have thought that Pinchas was a reformed smoker. And what God wanted us to know is that don't accuse everyone of things that you yourself are going through. We are reformed smokers. We very often react strongly to the very things that we're the most sensitive to. We hate the people that are most similar to us. The people in whom we see the negative midos that we have and that we're trying to fix and to change, those are the people that we have the strongest reaction to. The ones where our radar goes off the loudest. Because we're sensitive to that negative midah. Because we're engaged. We're living our lives trying to remove it from ourselves. We're not blind to it. And then when we see that reminder of it, we can easily get sucked back into that kind of behavior, and therefore we have to cut that person off. And what the Torah is telling us is that we have to be careful when we understand the world that way, and we understand that there are people that way, that there are reformed smokers. Not everybody's a reformed smoker. There are some people, and there are some things that we do that are purely l'shem shamayim, purely for the sake of heaven. And that they're motivated purely on motives for the love and the honor and the respect of God. And Pinchas was one of those. And we can't get sucked in to that way of thinking that, if he's zealous, he must be jealous. Not necessarily. Look him over carefully and understand who he really was. A Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aharon HaKohen. And once we understand that, then we can see the beauty in the action that Pinchas did. There's a question I'm going to leave us with, and I'm going to answer it in the Shabbos message, which will be sent out probably tomorrow. But if Pinchas did an act that God needed to say amen to, what that meant is that we can't do that also. God specifically had to say amen to it. He had to say this was okay, which means that most often actions like that are not okay. Some vigilantism is not okay because it's too dangerous, because it could come from the jealous place. That's where the zealousness could come from, and we have to be careful of that. Then if that's the case, what are we really learning from Pinchas? What's the real takeaway from Pinchas? I can't learn from his action. I can't learn from, if you see somebody committing an act of immorality like that, you can go and kill the two of them. No, you can't. It's halacha ve'emerin kain. Even if we say that you can, we don't paskin that way. You can't do that. So what do I really have to learn from Pinchas? And that I will address in the Shabbos message. But for now, let's understand what it is to be a reformed smoker, and understand that for most of us, when we feel zealous, check that carefully. Because a lot of times that zealous is jealous. That zealous is coming from a place of being a reformed smoker, which, by the way, is not bad. It's just you just got to check the reality and realize, why am I having such a visceral reaction to this? Because I'm still working on it. And recognize, though, that there are some people in the world that are in fact pure. And that, in fact, their zealousness and jealousy are not connected to each other. And those are the Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aharon HaKohen, who need specifically to be identified by God himself. Okay, it's my thoughts on the Parsha. Some good stuff to chew over. I think like this. I'm going to actually go into to make some final arrangements today, but I think that Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. I'm worried about 12 o'clock because I'm worried about the sun. Does 10 o'clock cut people out? I think I saw a. Okay. I'm just worried about it. I got a lot of comments back about the sun at 12. I'll try to check that out today, and I will put up on the Zoom chat. I don't know how else to communicate with everyone. You can be in touch with me on WhatsApp also to get the final time, either 10 or 12. But then I'm just going to go check and see what the sun situation is like. We'll probably do it in Holy Bagel, and I'm gonna check on that today also to make sure that we can do it there. If not, I'll come up with some kind of alternative and let everybody know. But let's plan on Sunday morning somewhere between 10 and 12, will be the siyum, the final shir, not just it's not just breakfast. It's the final shir, and then we'll be Messiah and we'll conclude the mission in Pirkei Avos. Okay, amazing.
Okay.
Everybody should have a beautiful, wonderful day. I'm not going to speak to you before Shabbos, so remember there's no class tomorrow. Beautiful, wonderful Shabbos, and Yetzer Hashem, we'll see everybody on Sunday morning.
Thanks, Rabbi.
I
Great day,
probably
guys.
can't make it on Sunday, but
Say
I
again?
think I probably can't make it on Sunday, but I think it's going to be hard to find a time when everybody can come.
Right. There were some people who told me they couldn't make it on Monday. I mean, it's wow.
I just want to say I can't make it on Sunday really either because I've got an appointment at 11 o'clock. And also it's going to get extremely hot still on Sunday. So I would maybe suggest a later day in the week.
Would it be possible to do it earlier on Sunday? Would it be possible to do it Shira time?
The normal 9 o'clock. I could do it at 9 o'clock. I was just worried for some people to have to get out of their houses and get somewhere by 9 o'clock might be complicated.
9 o'clock is fine.
I can get there for 9.
Wait, let me turn my thing on so I can hear everybody better. Okay, and what about 9 o'clock?
9 o'clock is fine.
I can, yes.
Shoshana, that's a yes or a flag down on the play? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So then 9 o'clock. Fine. I'm happy. 9 o'clock. Listen, for me, it's around the corner. It's like not a problem. I roll. Come back from that. I walk there from davening. It's not a problem for me. 9 o'clock is fine. I just thought later because maybe it would be hard, but it doesn't seem to be. So 9 o'clock. Fine. So in the area of 9 o'clock, and
You have vigorous students, Rabbi.
yeah, wow, it's amazing. It's amazing.
We may be senior citizens, but we're pretty.
Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. Okay, so fine. Sunday at 9, and I will let everybody know the exact location, but I think that it's going to be in Holy Bagel. I'm gonna try to go over there today and see if we can work out something there.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. Thank
Fantastic.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
And have a good Shabbos.
Bye bye. Have a good Shabbos.